Imagine this. You've spent your whole life believing in loyalty, in trust, believing that, at the end of the day, what you have at home is genuine, solid, real. But one day, something changes. Something breaks in the air, and even though you can't see it, you can feel it. It's like a strange scent floating in the room, like a smile that doesn't seem genuine. Because when someone betrays you, they leave traces. They always leave traces. And if your intuition is screaming that something is wrong, let me assure you, you're not crazy. The signs are there, but they're designed to go unnoticed, to confuse you, to make you believe that the problem is you. But it's not. Today I'm going to show you the 7 undeniable signs that a woman has just been intimate with someone else. Because even if she denies it, even if she tries to disguise it, her body, her attitude, her very surroundings will betray her. And trust me, the last sign is so brutal it will make you question everything. I'm Celia, and I'm here to open your eyes to what nobody wants you to discover. Stay with me, because this knowledge could be the difference between staying deceived or taking back control of your life. Have you ever felt that the person beside you is no longer the same? That even though their face remains familiar, their gaze no longer belongs to you? As if behind every smile, behind every word, there's something broken, something you can no longer fix. That feeling isn't paranoia, it's instinct. It's your mind telling you to open your eyes and stop pretending everything is fine. Because when someone has just been unfaithful, their behavior changes. There's no way to hide it completely, no matter how hard they try to disguise it with artificial affection or with a cold, inexplicable silence. This is the first point you need to understand. Sudden changes in attitude and emotional distance. Have you noticed how, from one day to the next, they stopped reaching out to you? Stopped asking how you're doing? Stopped genuinely caring about what's happening with you? Or worse, they've become excessively kind, as if trying to cover their guilt with a fake sense of attention. It's an age-old strategy. Pretend perfection so you don't notice the internal chaos. So you believe their smiles are still sincere. But there's something they can never hide, and that's the absence of real connection. Because when the mind is occupied elsewhere, when the body has been given to someone else, the bond that existed with you is broken. Picture this. A man named Michael comes home after a long day. The first thing he does is look for his wife, greet her, ask how her day has been. But something in his voice sounds empty, as if his greeting was never truly received. As if it were just background noise she prefers to ignore. Michael starts noticing that every time he tries to get close, she pulls away. There are no shared laughs anymore, no spontaneous conversations. Everything has become monotonous, cold. Somewhere along the way, they stopped being two connected people and turned into strangers merely sharing a roof. And it's not like he hadn't noticed it before. Of course he did, but he chose to ignore it. Because admitting something is wrong means facing the harsh reality that maybe he's no longer enough for her. But those thoughts are what ultimately destroy a man, because instead of facing the problem, he lies to himself. He convinces himself that it's all in his head, that it's just his imagination. And in that self-deception, he slowly loses control of his life. The reality is this: when someone becomes emotionally distant, there's always a reason. And if you feel that their behavior has changed abruptly, that suddenly they seem more distant or kinder than usual, it's because something is breaking inside. You can ignore it, keep pretending everything is fine, or you can open your eyes and face it once and for all. But this doesn't end here, because when someone becomes emotionally distant, they start doing things they would have never dared to do before. The change doesn't just happen in their words or their gaze, but in their most everyday actions. And this brings us to the second crucial point of this video: suspicious personal hygiene and unusual habits. Think about it for a moment. Human beings are creatures of habit. We move through routines, through habits that repeat daily, almost without us noticing. But when someone commits betrayal, that routine crumbles. Because the act itself is not only a physical event, but also a psychological blow. Suddenly, everything that used to be natural becomes an awkward reflex aimed at covering tracks, erasing traces, eliminating any evidence that could reveal the infidelity. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "No man is free if he cannot control himself," and that fits perfectly here, because someone who's unfaithful is trapped in their own guilt and in the constant fear of being discovered. Enslaved by their own impulses, they look for ways to hide them at all costs. But no matter how hard they try to control the consequences, the body betrays them, and the obsession with exaggerated cleanliness is one of the first symptoms. If you suddenly notice that your wife comes home and the first thing she does is rush to the bathroom to shower for no apparent reason, or if you find out she's carrying a spare change of clothes when she never used to, you should ask yourself why. This isn't about being paranoid, it's about being realistic. Because when someone has just betrayed you, their need to eliminate any physical trace of that act is so desperate that they end up exposing themselves through their own actions. Picture Michael, a man in his 60s, who starts noticing that his wife is coming home late and always with the same excuse. "I was just chatting with a friend." But something in him tells him there's more behind those words. Until one day, he sees her rushing to the bathroom as if trying to wash away something from her skin that doesn't belong. That was the moment Michael realized it wasn't just his imagination, because the way she cleanses herself isn't a routine act, but one of desperation, a reflection of the fear of being discovered. Infidelity has that brutal characteristic of changing even the simplest things, because someone who's hiding something always acts with desperation. There is no peace in someone who betrays, only the constant struggle to keep the lie alive. And that struggle reflects in their behavior, in their habits, in their way of facing reality. And as long as you keep closing your eyes, as long as you refuse to accept that what you see is real, you'll continue to be a victim of a deception built with every quick shower, with every piece of clothing that mysteriously disappears, or with every strange perfume meant to mask the scent of betrayal. Because even if they try to hide it, even if they strive to continue their life as if nothing happened, their body gives them away. And you know it, you've felt it. That uneasiness you can't explain, that hunch burning inside you that you choose to ignore because accepting the truth hurts. But it's better to face the pain than to live in a lie. So far, we've talked about the distant attitude and those suspicious hygiene habits meant to erase guilt. But there's something even more revealing, something you can't ignore if you truly want to uncover the truth. We've reached the third point of this video, frequent excuses for being away or coming home late. Because when someone is hiding a secret, their daily routine becomes their worst enemy, and they have to create a new reality to justify every absence. It's simple. If before, she always came home at the same time, and now it seems like meetings with friends, spontaneous outings, or endless errands keep multiplying, it's not a coincidence. This isn't about normal changes in her life. It's a symptom of someone manipulating their time to cover up what they don't want you to find out. Because infidelity isn't only reflected in what she does when she's with you, but most importantly, in what she does when she's not. Picture this. David, a man of 62, starts noticing that his wife goes out more and more often with her group of friends he'd never heard about before. What started as something occasional turns into a weekly habit. And when he tries to join her, he always gets the same response. "It's girl stuff. You won't feel comfortable." But there's something in her voice, in the nervous way she laughs when trying to justify those outings, that doesn't quite convince him. Because he knows it wasn't like this before. Because he knows that pattern of absences isn't natural, but rather a cover-up for something much bigger. This is where the strategy you need to apply comes in if you really want to find out the truth. Instead of confronting her directly, which is what most people do and leads to pointless arguments, you need to apply what I call strategic observation. This isn't about stalking her or obsessing over her every move. It's about genuinely paying attention to the patterns that begin to form in her behavior. First, identify how often those outings or delays occur. If they are isolated events, there may be no reason to be alarmed. But if it's something recurring, you need to open your eyes. Second, don't just accept the superficial explanation she gives you. If she's really doing what she says she's doing, her story will be coherent, consistent, and won't need exaggerated embellishments. Third, watch her body language every time she justifies going out. Because even if her words lie, her body always speaks the truth. For example, if she tells you she went to dinner with a friend and when you ask what she ate, she freezes or gives you a vague answer, that dinner probably never happened. If her story changes every time you bring it up, or if she reacts with irritation when you casually ask a question, then you have a clear sign that something doesn't add up. And this technique of strategic observation isn't about catching someone in a lie, but confirming your suspicions with facts, not just assumptions. Because the worst betrayal you can commit against yourself is blindly believing words that have no substance. Now, before continuing with the next signs, I want you to do something. If anything I've said so far has resonated with you, I want you to leave a comment below telling me where you're watching me from. And also tell me if you've ever felt that someone was trying to manipulate you with poorly made excuses. I want to hear your story because sharing it is the first step to stop being a victim and start taking control of your life. If this message is opening your eyes, subscribe now and give this video a like, because what comes next is even stronger, and the last sign is so brutal it could change forever the way you perceive reality. Let's continue. We've already discussed the constant excuses, those flimsy justifications that crumble with the slightest questioning. But there's something even more delicate, something that's not only reflected in what she says, but also in what she does, or more accurately, in what she no longer does. We've reached the fourth point of this video, changes in her desire or intimate behavior. Because if there's one thing infidelity always reveals, it's the physical bond between two people. That bond, no matter how much she tries to deny it, is never the same again. This is where most men make a devastating mistake. When they start noticing that their wife is no longer interested in intimacy, or conversely, becomes excessively passionate, they think the problem is with them. That maybe they're not attractive enough, interesting enough, man enough. They convince themselves that the fault lies with them, and in that process of self-destruction, they begin to offer more than they receive, to crawl for scraps of affection, believing that will fix things. But the reality is more brutal than they're willing to accept. When a woman has been unfaithful, her intimate behavior suffers alterations that are impossible to disguise. On one hand, it may happen that her desire for you dwindles to nothing, because by giving herself to another man, her energy and attention are completely diverted. The guilt, the constant comparison, the feeling of living two lives at the same time, all of that distances her from you. And you, instead of seeing it as a warning sign, take it as a personal flaw, as if your value depended on her continuing to desire you. On the other hand, there's the other side of the coin, the one where her desire increases strangely, almost desperately, because she knows she's betraying you and believes she can make up for it with empty caresses and fake promises. She tries to maintain appearances, convincing herself that there's still something worth saving. But she doesn't realize that her desperate effort to cover up the truth only makes it more obvious. Because genuine desire can't be forced, it can't be faked, and when someone tries, the result is so artificial that even you, trying to hold on to hope, can feel it. The real mental trap here is that you blame yourself for her lack of interest or her sudden eagerness to please. You wonder what you're doing wrong, when the reality is that the problem isn't you. The problem is that someone who has decided to betray you can hardly give herself authentically, because her mind is already elsewhere, her body has been shared, and that simple fact changes everything. If you let that false guilt settle in your mind, you become a prisoner of a lie that was never your responsibility. You convince yourself that if you try to be kinder, more attentive, more understanding, she will go back to being the same as before. But the truth is, it was never about improving who you are. It's about understanding that your value doesn't depend on the approval of someone who has chosen to break the commitment you both had. Imagine David, a man who starts noticing that his wife seeks him out more in bed after weeks of constant rejections. At first, he takes it as a positive sign, as an attempt to restore their relationship. But there's something in those encounters that doesn't feel real. Everything becomes automatic, rushed, mechanical. Until one day, he discovers the truth. Those gestures weren't acts of love, but a desperate way to silence her own guilt. And that's when David understands that everything he thought was being rebuilt was just an illusion. So far, we've uncovered signs that only someone willing to open their eyes can recognize. But there's an aspect that may seem insignificant until you carefully analyze it. Because it's not only about her behavior with you or her strange absences. There's something that reflects the level of trust left in the relationship, and that is access to her personal world. We're talking about technological devices more protected than ever before. We live in an age where everything is stored in a small device. Messages, calls, photos, private conversations. And when someone feels guilty for what they've done, their first reaction is to protect that digital world as if their life depended on it. Before, your wife could leave her phone on the table, unlocked, without any concern. But suddenly, everything changes. Her phone is always by her side, the screen turns off the moment she puts it down, and any attempt to touch it becomes an offense. The problem is that most men fall into the trap of justifying these changes. They tell themselves it's normal, that everyone has a right to their privacy, that they shouldn't be suspicious. But there's a massive difference between having privacy and hiding secrets. And you know it, even if you don't want to accept it. Because every time you see her typing messages compulsively, every time you see that nervous expression on her face when her phone rings and she rushes to answer, something inside you screams that this is not normal. Here's the most destructive part of all this. Instead of confronting the situation, you choose to believe it's your fault for being suspicious, that you're paranoid, an incurable, jealous man. And in that attempt to convince yourself that nothing is happening, you start to withdraw, to give up your power, to become a man who would rather be ignored than face the truth, because self-deception becomes a comfortable refuge, but also a deadly prison. The reality is this: if someone behaves as if they are guarding a hidden treasure, it's because they are hiding something. Period. And it's not about becoming an obsessive person who checks every detail. It's about opening your eyes and seeing the facts for what they are. Because if you choose to ignore them, all you accomplish is becoming an accomplice to your own emotional destruction. Reversing this situation requires a radical change in your mindset. First, you need to stop justifying the unjustifiable. If someone who is supposedly sharing their life with you acts as if they have secrets to protect, you have every right to question it. But don't do it out of desperation or resentment. Do it from the absolute clarity that you deserve respect. And respect is earned through sincerity, not by hiding the truth behind locked screens and passwords you never know. Second, you need to understand that your worth is not determined by the approval or affection of someone who acts as if they're living a double life. Because every time you try to blind yourself to those signs, you're betraying yourself. And if there's one thing a man should never do, it's betray himself. Picture Robert, a man who has been married for over 30 years. One day, without warning, he realizes his wife now sleeps with her phone under her pillow, something she's never done before. At first, he tries to ignore it. He convinces himself it's just his imagination. But as the days go by, the evidence piles up. Deleted messages, calls never mentioned, arguments that start with a simple, "Why are you being so paranoid?" Until he finally understands that his mistake wasn't being suspicious. His mistake was ignoring the truth when it was right in front of his eyes. The only way to free yourself from this mental trap is to take control of your own life. I'm not saying you should become a desperate watchdog. I'm saying you need to stop justifying things you know aren't normal, that you accept the truth even if it hurts, because only when you do that can you begin to reclaim your dignity. The question is, are you going to keep allowing yourself to be treated like a fool? Or are you going to take control of your life and face what's really happening? Because this isn't about controlling her. It's about reclaiming yourself. If everything you've heard so far feels familiar, then you know that each sign I've mentioned is like a direct blow to your pride. But there's something else, something that can't be completely hidden and always leaves a trace. We've reached the 6th point of this video, unexplained spending or strange financial behavior. Because when someone is betraying you, their financial life is also affected. And no matter how hard they try to disguise it, there's always a slip, an inconsistency that betrays them. Imagine this. You and your wife have always shared finances transparently. You know how much she earns, how much she spends, and where she spends it. But one day, you notice that her credit card has transactions that don't align with her usual routine. Purchases she never mentioned, withdrawals of money she never justifies. And when you decide to ask her about it, her answer is so vague and superficial that instead of putting your mind at ease, it only raises more suspicions. She tells you it was gifts for friends or things she needed, but she never shows you anything concrete. And even though you try to convince yourself everything is fine, you know something's off about that story. Here's the brutal truth. When a woman has been unfaithful, her financial behavior also changes. Because that kind of betrayal doesn't only require time and energy, it also demands resources. Trips to places you don't know, dinners she never shares with you, gifts bought with money that magically disappears from the account. And instead of facing it, you choose to look the other way. Because admitting you're being kept in the dark means accepting that you don't have control over the situation. And that, for a man who's spent his life building something solid, is unbearable. But it's not just about the money being spent without explanation. It's also about the reactions that come with simply asking what's going on. Because when someone feels cornered, their first response is aggression. They accuse you of being distrustful, of exaggerating, of wanting to control everything. And you, in a pathetic attempt to not lose her, give in. You keep quiet. You let the doubt fester inside you until you can no longer ignore it. And it's at this point where you start to crumble. Because financial betrayal isn't just an economic problem, it's a reflection of the lie that's destroying your relationship from the inside. Because if someone has to hide how they spend their money or make excuses every time an unusual expense pops up, it's because there's something they don't want you to find out. Do you know what the real problem is here? You convince yourself that it's not worth questioning those details, that you'd rather keep up the artificial peace than face the truth. Because doing so would mean risking everything you thought was safe. But let me ask you, what good is it to maintain peace if it's built on lies? The only way to face this is by reclaiming your dignity, and that starts by stopping the justification of the unjustifiable, by no longer allowing someone to manipulate your emotions for their own convenience. If you notice that money is going toward things you never see, if you notice that every time you ask, you get evasions or attacks instead of answers, then you need to act. Because what's at stake isn't just your financial stability, it's your self-respect. Imagine continuing in this situation for months, even years, watching your effort and dedication vanish into things you don't even know about, living with the constant suspicion that you're being used as a mere provider while you convince yourself everything is fine. That's not life. That's becoming a slave to your own emotions. Up to this point, we've unearthed what many prefer to keep ignoring. The emotional distance, the strange habits, the clumsy excuses, the forced or absent desire, the technological lies, and the money slipping away like water through your fingers. All of this points to a painful reality that hurts more than you're willing to admit. But there's one sign that always betrays someone trying to hide the truth. And that sign is so brutal because it goes beyond words or cheap justifications. We're talking about changes in body language and microexpressions. The body doesn't lie. It never has. While her mouth offers excuses and her eyes try to show you a calm that she doesn't feel, her body betrays her. The nervous movements, the looks that avoid yours, the rigidity in her gestures when she tries to explain herself. Because even if she tries to cover the truth with elaborate speeches, her body language doesn't know how to lie. And deep down, you know it. You've always known it. The problem is that instead of facing the reality, you choose to justify the unjustifiable. You tell yourself over and over that you're exaggerating, that you can't destroy everything over simple suspicions. But what if those suspicions aren't so simple? What if that discomfort you feel every time you look her in the eyes is the truth pushing from within to come out? Because the truth doesn't hide forever. It can disguise itself. It can dissolve into sweet words and empty promises, but it always finds a way to show itself. Think about it. How many times have you seen her laugh in a forced way? How many times do her eyes avoid yours when you ask something simple? How many times does she seem impatient, as if your presence is more of a bother than a pleasure? The little gestures that used to be natural now seem calculated, studied. The rigidity in her movements is the physical manifestation of her guilt, and you notice it, even if you try to turn a blind eye. If you've made it this far, it's because you already suspected it, because every word I've said has resonated in some corner of your mind that you'd rather ignore. But the truth always leaves traces, and if you continue to let them lie to you, the problem isn't just hers, it's yours, because you choose to accept a life built on a lie, because you choose to deceive yourself into thinking it's better to live in ignorance than face reality. But let me make one thing clear. There's nothing more destructive than continuing to deny the obvious. Every day you allow the lie to settle into your life, you lose a piece of yourself, your dignity, your self-esteem, your power as a man. Because if you're not able to face the truth, then what are you capable of facing? The change depends entirely on you, no one else. If you keep ignoring those signs, if you keep letting the lie take over your life, then you have no right to complain later. Because the power to act has always been in your hands, not in hers, not in anyone else's, only in yours. Now is the time to decide. Are you going to keep living in ignorance? Are you going to let the fear of the truth control every step you take? Or are you going to take back control of your life and start living with the dignity you deserve? Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that you can look at yourself in the mirror and know that you didn't betray yourself. This is the final sign, but not the last lesson, because now the real question is, what are you going to do with everything you've discovered? The answer is up to you, and only you. If you've made it this far, it means you're different. You're someone willing to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. You'd rather open your eyes and see reality, no matter how brutal, than continue living in the comfortable ignorance of excuses and lies. Not everyone has the courage to hear these truths all the way through, because admitting that something is wrong, that you're being betrayed, that your life isn't what you thought it was, takes more courage than simply turning a blind eye and moving forward as if nothing is happening. This is not a message of comfort. I'm not here to tell you that everything will magically get better or that life will take care of delivering justice. No, things don't resolve themselves. If someone has decided to betray you, if someone has chosen to lie to you time and time again, the only person who can put a stop to it is you. No one will recover your dignity for you. No one will return the respect you lost by ignoring the obvious. Now it's your turn. You already have the truth in front of you, and you can choose to ignore it or take action. You can keep accepting poorly made excuses, pretending everything is fine when you know it's not, or you can do something about it, because you deserve to live with dignity. You deserve respect, and above all, you deserve to take back control of your life. I want you to leave a comment below saying only this: I deserve the truth, because by writing it, you're acknowledging that you will no longer allow anyone to keep deceiving you. And I also want you to tell me what country you're watching me from, because this isn't just about me talking and you listening. This is a community of people who've decided to wake up. I'm Celia, and this is Home of Wisdom. This channel exists to open your eyes, to show you reality without filters or empty promises, because real change starts when you decide to stop living in the lie and begin to act with the truth in your hand. Here, you won't find sweet words or cheap comfort. Here, you'll find the strength you need to face what others prefer to stay silent about. If this message helped you open your eyes, Subscribe now. Join this community of men who've decided to wake up and take back what belongs to them, their dignity, their power, their truth. Share this video because, even if you don't believe it, someone else needs to hear this today. And this doesn't end here. The conversation continues. Click on one of the videos that will appear on the screen, because if you're ready to fully open your eyes, you can't stop now. The journey to the truth has only just begun.